Hello, in this short video, we are going to discuss cross-origin resource sharing. Before starting the discussion, let's understand the key terms. What is origin? Origin is the part of URL which indicates the server where the URL is being redirected, basically where the endpoint is being redirected. So the origin has a scheme, it has a host name and port. Uh, the moment you see this, you will recognize and you will know what is the origin. Scheme here is HTTPS, HTTP here, and then you have the host name. If there is no port which is mentioned, by default it is a port number 80. Otherwise, you are mentioned. You can also specify the port number by indicating it after a colon. What is resource? Whatever you access from the server, be it static, dynamic pages, the cascading style sheets, JavaScript images, response from the REST endpoints. These are the resources which you fetch from the server. A URL tells you where the resource is located. So for example, in this case, it's a static resource, apple.com, apple.jpg is the image which we are directly referencing from a URL. Otherwise, you can invoke HTTP verbs on the URL and fetch the resource. So for example, you want to get a JSON from the server. So you will send a GET request and you will fetch the JSON from the server. So that is a resource which you are fetching from the server. Now, before we go to cross origin resource sharing, let's understand what is the same origin policy. Same origin policy is a security feature implemented in web browsers. This, what does it do? It prevents web pages from making requests to different origin. It will be clear once I give you this example. The main purpose of same origin policy is to protect users from cross-site request forgery. And this is a kind of attack which can be done on the websites. We'll see the details of what CSRF is in some of the other videos. But for now, understand that it is something which is harmful to your resources which are coming from the server. Any site, any JavaScript can have access to that information and you utilize that information for nefarious purpose. So that's where we have to block that information. So let's say you have a browser and from the browser you open ziffy.com. The request would be directed to ziffy.com, and because the origin is same, so it would be https jiffy.com. The server returns the response, and because the response is coming from the same server, the browser would allow the page to be loaded here. Let's say inside the jiffy.com you have a script which is accessing some resource from yahoo.com, and this is because this origin is a different one. So this page which is loaded on the browser has jiffy.com page, and now it is requesting different origin yahoo.com. So this kind of resource loading would not be allowed here on the browser because of same origin policy. Now with this introduction, let's go to the current day applications. So current day applications, mostly they would be single page applications hosted on a server. So for example, on a bank server, you would be having a SPA loaded, and then you shall be accessing the various resources from a cluster of servers or cluster of API services, which are microservices, which are there. From that, you shall be fetching the resources. So the flow is user would request for the static content from the SPA from the server which is hosting the SPA, and post that all the requests to fetch the resources would be done from the microservices. Now, what would happen if you have the same origin policy? These requests would not be allowed, and that's where cross origin resource sharing is something which is essential for the current day architecture. So the same thing again represented here. Now what happens is because because we have at the server side we mentioned that we are allowing this resource to be accessed by this site, which means from the bank.com which was loaded on the browser, that is the origin when the request for this data was made. What was the origin? Origin was this. So we allow the www.bank.com to access the API from api.bank.com. So this resource would be mentioning that, okay, I would allow this to be represented for a www.bank.com. Thereby, the CORS would be disabled for the CORS would be enabled for this specific site, and thereby the resource would be indicated on the SPA. So, so that's what is represented here. Soon we will see a demonstration and it will become much more clearer. Before the demonstration, let me inform what technologies I have used for the demonstration. So I have used Node.js. As you may be knowing, this is an open source runtime environment and it allows JavaScript code to be run outside of web browser. Apart from this, I'm using NodeMon. NodeMon, you can directly use Node also, but NodeMon allows you to edit the code and without restarting your Node application, you can see the edits. Express is a you can understand it as a web framework. We will when we see the code, we will understand what it does. And CORS is for the cross-origin resource sharing. This module, this library is for that purpose. The installation very simple, like you will do for any node packages. You will be using the node package manager, sorry, and you will be doing this installation like this. Okay, and if in case you want to save your package JSON file, then you can do a save option here. Okay, and this is local and global installs. So you can use any of these commands to have these things installed in your machine. And you can, the prerequisite is that you have Node and NPM both installed in your machine. And you would find ample amount of resources on the web how to do this installation. Let's see the demonstration now. So first I'll show you the script, JavaScript, which I have written. I'll do a cat on index.js. It's a very simple thing wherein I have the Express framework serving the resource, and then I have this resource which is basically a simple JSON representing some account holders, and then I have exposed the get where I respond with the accounts, this resource, and it is listening on port 8085. Okay. Now, if I have to serve this, so right now, if I do this, it is not serving, so nothing will happen. But to serve this, what I can do, I'll do a clear first. I'll say node-mon and index.js. So now if I refresh this, I should be able to see that the information has been represented here. Now let's see, I wanted to access this information from the google.com as a origin. So what I'll do is I'll open the developer tools. I'll go to the console, and in the console I'll do a fetch for this specific destination and trying to fetch the resource called accounts. Now you see that I am getting a denied, blocked by the CORS policy. So cross origin resource sharing has blocked this request. If you go to the network tab, you shall be able to see that there was a request for accounts which was done, and that request was basically denied. Why it was denied? If you see, the origin of the request is google.com and the request host is localhost 8085. So the origin is not matching the host, thereby this request is being rejected by the browser. Okay, that's the basic premise of how the CORS work. Now let's say that we want to fix this. How we shall fix this issue? I'll go to the terminal again. I'll do a Control C. Let me do a cat for this so that I can show you what has been done. So again, the same thing, but what I'm doing now, I'm using this CORS library and I'm saying that you allow this cross origin resource sharing shall be done for this origin. So google.com shall be allowed to access the resources, which resources, this resources it will be able to access. So let's do the same thing again. I'll clear it and I'll say nodemon and I'll say CORS index. Okay, now we shall be doing the same thing again. If you see, there is no change on this request because it is serving the same JSON. And let me clear this here. And what I'll do is I'll go to the console one more time. I'll request the same request now. And this time it is allowed. And why it is allowed? You go to the network tab again And if you see here, access control allow origin as google.com. So google.com is allowed to access this resource, thereby this resource you are able to use. So this was a succinct demo. Now let's go to some advanced concepts here. So all this code which is there, I'll put the Git location of the code in the description of this video. So there are two kinds of requests which are there. Simple requests, any get, post, head, those are simple requests. There are multiple clauses which are there, but the important thing to understand is that there is a simple request and there is a pre-flight request. So if you are doing a, let's say, a patch or a post, then it is not a simple request. So what the browser does is it makes an automatic pre-flight request. Why it does that is, as you can understand the severity of impact if in case you are doing a delete on a resource. So before calling the delete specifically, the server checks, the browser checks whether it is allowed to make that specific verb call or not. And based on the decisioning which comes from the server would be making the subsequent call. So pre-flight and simple requests, you should be aware that there are these two kinds of requests which are there. And pre-flight is meant to make the environment more safe. And only in the case of successful, when it's a pre-flight request, only in the case of successful cases, the actual request to the server shall be made. So the previous one which I showed you, that was also a pre-flight. And why it was a pre-flight, why it was not a simple request is because it was serving a JSON resource. So if at all it's a JSON resource, a pre-flight request would be sent with the options header. So I'm going to fetch the resource, and because the resource is a JSON type of resource, if I go to the network, I'll be seeing a pre-flight request. And the pre-flight request has a request method options, and it basically indicates whether this request is allowed or not. So it is allowed, and thereby the next request is made, and you are able to fetch the details of the resource which you have requested. This concludes the demo on CORS. Thank you very much.